everyone. Thank you for listening to the Drinks.com podcast, the business of online alcohol. I'm your host, Brandon Amoroso, and today I'm talking with Kristin Olszewski, founder and CEO of Nomadica Wine, a sommelier-curated, premium, sustainably packaged wine company. Thank you for coming on the show.
Brandon, I'm just so impressed with your pronunciation of my last name. You said it one time before, and then it rolled off your tongue.
I'll take the credit where I can get it. I'm going to say beginner's luck on that one though. So
the person who actually married my husband and I did not say my name correctly during my wedding ceremony. So I just want to say you're better than him.
Well, maybe I have a future then in whatever that term is in hosting.
Officiant.
Weddings. Yeah, exactly. Or I can help with the pronunciation. But thank you so much for coming on. Before we dive in here to some of the topics that we want to cover, can you give everybody just a quick background on you?
Absolutely. So I have been a sommelier in Michelin restaurants for my entire career before starting Nomadica. I actually ended up dropping out of med school to become a sommelier because I love wine so much. My family has still not forgiven me, but spent a lot of time at restaurants like Osteria Mosa. I was the beverage director for Sean Brock at Husk in Nashville, and was bi-coastal for a while between Nantucket and Palm Springs, and then worked in San Francisco at restaurants like Saison and Sons and Daughters. So I have been around.
Mm-hmm. And what sparked that initial sort of passion for wine?
So it's funny, I was doing my internship at Dana-Farber Cancer Hospital, which is, the best cancer hospital in the US. And every day I would walk in there and I would feel like I was stealing myself to, do something I didn't want. And I think at the time, I was in my early 20s, I was so concerned with people perceiving me as intelligent. I was the first person in my family to ever go to college, and I've always been one of those like gold star humans, like incredibly competitive, just always like driven to get the check mark or the the honors program or the gold star, just without a lot of thought behind it. And I paid for school by waitressing on this little island off the coast of Massachusetts named Nantucket, which is where, Moby Dick is set. It's where the 1% vacations. And I worked at a restaurant that Julia Childs actually opened, and it had a very deep Burgundy and Bordeaux cellar. I mean, they had been just collecting Bordeaux since the 60s. So the opportunity to taste wines that, I haven't even seen in years, to be quite frank, was just unparalleled. And it was a very generous guest who that was present there. That was just like, okay, I'm opening up this Pouilly Montrachet. Do you want half the bottle? I'm only going to take a glass. And I really caught the wine bug there. And then when I went back to Boston, there was this one wine bar near my school. The most incredible owner. She was the first person to really expose me to Alto Piemonte and Austrian wines, and really outside of the traditional Burgundy, Bordeaux, Champagne route that many sommeliers take at first. And unfortunately, she got diagnosed with ALS, and that was a really big impetus for me to change my life, because seeing somebody so full of joie de vivre, so young, with so much passion, who, from my perspective, kind of had her life stripped away from her, made me aware of, how short my life can really be without my knowledge. And I just decided to say, screw it, I'll just be a somm. Like, who knows where my wine career will take me? Being a doctor is such a more clear path. Like, you just put one foot in front of the other and then you get to your goal. But stepped into this world, and here I am running a wine company.
And what was the evolution like from, sommelier to deciding that you wanted to start your own business, which probably has even less of a defined path than being a somm?
I think I really didn't know what I was getting into. And I think many young entrepreneurs would never have started their businesses if they knew what it actually entailed. I think, coming from the restaurant industry, I've always been used to long hours. I've always worked really hard. That is something that, my family instilled in me from a very young age. Like, you work hard, and it was never the hours. I think I was not prepared for the level of stress and anxiety that accompanies being
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. Like, people talk about it, but man, it overtakes your life. But so I was like, oh, well, I'll just start a wine company. And when I looked at it, because the impetus really came from the fact that when I was working on the floor of restaurants like Moza, people my own age would come into the restaurants so excited to eat. They just watched Nancy Silverton on Chef's Table. That exposed a whole different audience to Michelin restaurants, which was really exciting. But they'd come in and they'd drink tequila and they wouldn't order wine.
Hmm.
And such a miss. I mean, nothing is going to pair with your food like a bottle of wine will. Wine will accentuate and uplift your meal. Also, there's just something so romantic. It's a living beverage. You're sharing it with your dining partner. And I would notice that the second I walked over to these young people, particularly young women, and brought them into my world, didn't make them feel bad for their pronunciation or judge for not knowing anything about wine, let them taste by the glass wines to get a feel for what they wanted, didn't try to oversell them, found them a great bottle at a great price. They were hooked. And I wanted to do that on a larger scale because I think that there's a huge issue facing the wine industry right now. That's not just my problem, it's everyone's problem, which is that young consumers are not drinking wine.
Hmm.
Every day a wine drinker dies and they're not replaced. So started Nomadica to really solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, most of my friends and around my age, they don't drink wine. They definitely don't buy wine like at a store and collect it at all. And so I feel like there's also competing, alternatives that are coming to the market, whether it's in, low or no alc or cannabis or whatever it may be, that are, I think, more relevant at the lower price points than necessarily like the high end price points. You're not substituting, I don't know, like 25-year-old Japanese whiskey for a quick RTD from the store, but there's definitely a lot of competition coming in as well and competing for that younger generation. So it's like, how do you make wine cool? I think is a
Yes.
challenge as well.
That's been the biggest challenge. And, we talk a lot about the damp lifestyle, and I'm such a big fan of the low and no alcohol movement. I, as a sommelier, have seen a lot of people in my industry, a lot of colleagues fall prey to alcoholism. It is definitely something to be aware of. But I think that's also the beauty of Nomadica. I think one reason why a lot of people don't drink wine as their kind of, Thursday night drink is because when you open a whole bottle, you feel immense pressure to consume it all. And sometimes you just want a glass of wine. But a lot of what's in the single serve landscape is not quality. And so we really solve that problem for somebody looking to, consciously consume or drink a little bit less.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And making it more approachable in that way, like for me, when I go to a restaurant, I just refuse to get a glass because I know I'm paying more than what I should be if I was just getting a bottle. But also, especially being in Miami, I always just bring my own wine because the lists are offensive when it comes to the markups that they put on. But that discovery aspect is really important. And hopefully you're not killing a bottle by yourself every night and you're having a can instead and testing and trying new things, which I think is really important. I don't understand people who are like, I only drink Pinot Noir or I only drink Malbec. It's so boring. You need to expand the palate a little bit.
I know, I agree. I think that is part of why I got into wine because it's really a rabbit hole that there's no end, to always learn something new about. My specialty is Italian wine. And then, of course, because I make wine in California, I'm so lucky to be part of such a dynamic scene of young vintners who are really changing the landscape of what we think of when we say California wine. But man, there's so much more to learn.
When jumping into the actual business of Nomadica itself, when did you start it? Was it like 2017, 2018?
6 years ago.
6 years? Okay.
6 years ago. So I would say, but our first real year in business was 2020. That's when I I left the floor of Mozza at the end of 2019 and went full-time Nomadica in November of 2019. And then, of course, we were launching and opening up 10 new states at the beginning of COVID. So what a fun experience that was to survive such harrowing times, but we made it.
What I mean, when you went to, it was an interesting time for you to start the business for sure because of COVID. So I guess, how did you think about starting it and expanding and growing? And then how did you have to pivot because of COVID? And then like now, how are you thinking about it as well as, online and retail sort of, go back and forth in terms of prioritization for both alcohol brands, but even just, regular brands in the space that I talk to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am an idealist. And so like my undergraduate degree is in sustainable agriculture. And when I found out that a majority of the carbon footprint in a bottle of wine comes from the actual glass bottle itself, I was horrified. So much of my career as a sommelier has come from telling stories about great farmers. And I always felt so impassioned by that. I was like, what other industry, are you supporting great farmers and great agricultural practices? And started Nomadica to lessen that. As we only use aluminum that's 100% recycled. We use BPA-free liner in our cans. And it's true, there is really no difference in the quality of our can. Like you put a $20 bottle next to our can and blind taste it, I'm 99% sure we'd come out ahead on that. But really, really challenging. I had to go convince a bunch of famous winemakers to partner with me because I needed their buy-in on the process. So a bunch of people said no, and that I was insane and that it would never work. And Bob Lindquist from Coupe, who's I think one of the most legendary winemakers in California. He's one of the Rhone Rangers. He's one of the vintners responsible for the growth of Syrah and Grenache on the Central Coast. Like he was the first person to say yes to me. And one of the first wines we did was French Camp Syrah in a can. And I got Bob's buy-in on that, and then raised a friends and family round from my regulars at Mozza. Because again, like I did not grow up in a well-connected network. And so these people who I had been doing their wine for years were like, okay, I'll support you. I'll throw like 50K into that. Like, let's go. And then just started surrounding myself with great people, great advisors who helped me open up distribution across the US. And originally, I thought, where can I go that these big wine conglomerates can't? And that was in the on-premise. So bars, restaurants, hotels, places where you would be hard pressed to find another wine and can, just because I knew our quality was better than anyone else. And because I spent 10 years working in that industry, like that expertise, and those people were my colleagues, not just gatekeepers. And so, we got a national deal with the W Hotel. That was kind of our first big break. Or back in the day, Ryan Bailey, who's now the owner of Cato, which is an incredible Taiwanese tasting menu restaurant in Los Angeles. It's a 1 Michelin star. He was the first person to take me in at the Nomad Hotel. And it was incredibly validating for us and for canned wine at large. But we had to pivot pretty hard during COVID. We had not set up D2C, which was a huge miss. It took me 6 months to get it up and running in 2020. Oh my God, it was awful. And we didn't even have like any retail set up. We were in a few independents, but no chain retail.
Okay.
And so it was a catch up game for sure, and a matter of grit and kind of holding on. But now we're more focused on the natural organic channel and then e-commerce retail.
Got it. Okay. And does I assume retail supports e-com and sort of vice versa as well?
Exactly. I mean, omni-channel is everything. You hear it from everyone. Our CMO, Shrey Joshi, who was at Health Aid before starting his own agency, Good Peeps, I jokingly call him the king of omni-channel, but he is the reason why my face is all over TikTok talking about wine, because one hand really does feed the other.
Yeah. I feel like that's been a struggle in the alcohol industry though, to have that mindset sort of trickle through, especially in organizations where, you have those that are incentivized purely off of, sell through in stores, and then those that are incentivized purely off of the sell through online. And you have these like competing interests that have been created internally, when really it should be like, the rising tide lifts all boats type of deal. And consumer habits change all the time. I mean, you see with COVID, crazy e-com spike, then, people rush back into stores. Now it's sort of like settling out again. You really do need to be everywhere.
Exactly. And I just feel like awareness is everything. I mean, you hear it as often as I do. Attention is the best currency at the moment. And so that's really my focus, is how do we communicate all of our messaging and get it out to the young consumer?
And what are some of the ways that you are capturing that attention? You mentioned TikTok. Like, what are other ways that brands that are listening should be thinking about when, trying to capture that awareness and attention from potential customers?
I think, obviously just organic social is the best, especially for a brand like us. Very few wine startups are run by women, and also somebody with industry expertise. We're really taking a lot of notes from the beauty industry. Like some of my favorite brands, like do skincare, just Glossier, even started by experts or aficionados who use their expertise as a way to crack open the door. And so we are giving our customers a chance to learn about wine with me and become mini sommeliers through the act of interacting with our content and drinking our wine. Real life activations are also really important for us. There's no better way to get your product out there than actually getting liquid to lips. And I think Aidan Duffy, our creative director, and myself have really thought about what is the most authentic to us and our brand. And so we do artist partnerships for each can. You have the artist name on the back of each can and a link to their Instagram, and we pay our artists, which I really like to overemphasize. It's not just hey, we'll do this for exposure. I kind of think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
But we activate in gallery spaces. We love to support our artists. We love to partner with chefs and brands that are our friends that align with our ethos. We did a dinner in LA recently with Ozma, which is a sustainable clothing company that my friend Chloe Cooks did all the food for, and it's all farm to table, like incredible apéro style spread, and just showing up in an authentic way and getting people to try your product who are in your community and your network is essential.
And how do you tie out, like, doing those in-person activations and translating that over into, real sales or a longevity of a customer versus these sort of flash in the pan moments with the in-person activations?
Yeah, that's such a great question. That's one of the most challenging things. I think, again, going back to the attention, content is key here. So however we can, for example, the Ozma thing, we were able to get a slew of contact, some incredible photos, and then we can ship out through email and SMS, recipes from that to our entire subscriber list. So it's like, okay, you don't live in LA, but you love this clothing company. Make this anchovy dish at home and pair it with our sparkling white wine the same way that we're doing at this event in LA, and bring it home with you.
Got it. So being able to have like that take home, next step. And then do you leverage, like, I assume you're pushing them towards e-com after the fact as well, and leveraging, like email and text to re-engage with them?
Doing all the things. Also, we're really focused right now at driving people to Whole Foods. Of course, it's our retailer that we love the most, and we launched our orange wine in partnership with them this past July, and it's just the right channel for us. It's the right consumer. Whole Foods has really strict parameters in place with how they source their wine, and That's, our ethos as well, as all of our wines are sustainably farmed, no chemical manipulation, low sulfur, because you don't need it when you're canning wine.
Would you say that like your price point lends itself, and also the packaging lends itself better to in person and the retail environment than necessarily e-com?
Yes, I do. I feel like people buy our wine because they like how it looks. I think most consumers purchase based off the label, and everything about our package screams premium. Our creative director has done an incredible job of communicating how great the quality of our wine is.
Mm-hmm.
Although, online, there is so much content to engage with that you don't get at the store level. Like, this has been a big challenge for us because our demo is a young female, 25 to 35-year-old female. And so online, you see my face, it's female founded, it's founded by an expert. I can talk you through the tasting notes and the quality of it and talk about how it's fermented dry, so there's 0 grams of sugar. Whereas on the shelf, it's been more challenging to communicate all of those value props and reasons to buy.
Got it. Because that's an interesting point, because I actually think it's the reverse problem for wineries. Like when I went to Napa this summer and went into the tasting room, they did like a phenomenal job, since they're there, like of explaining, the product and the unique differences behind it and the history and whatnot. But then you go to their online website and you're like, I don't even know what this is. Like it just is not tied together in any way whatsoever. I think it's interesting, brands like yourself, where you're coming at it more from a digitally native standpoint and very, social media savvy, but you don't have like, the vineyard that you have people coming and visiting in the tasting room. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is those businesses. And there's this gap right now, I feel like.
100%. And I think it's kind of the biggest issue right now. That's why I've been so inspired by this recent string of acquisitions by Gallo this past summer.
Mm-hmm.
Bev, Rombauer, and Massican. Like, wow, what an interesting series of business decisions there. And I think Bev has done such a great job of being a digitally native brand and talking to the young consumer and showing up on the internet when people were rolling their eyes about it.
Yeah.
Within the own industry, proving that it does matter. And same thing with Massican. I mean, 2 years ago, he came out with like his own drink emojis and he did NFTs and he is crossed over into spaces that, traditionally wineries don't. And it's just so inspiring to see.
Yeah. Those acquisitions have been interesting. And it also, I think, sheds light to what the bigger players in the industry are focused on or are, looking outwards ahead of, because I don't know any of those businesses, financials or anything like that, but I could just about guarantee that they didn't buy them because of the revenue, or they didn't buy them because of their profitability. They bought them because of their ability to, connect to customers, to get all of that first and zero party data, to be, trendsetters. And then, by merging the two, with all the resources of like the larger business, but then, the creativity and the social savviness of the more digitally native brands, they'll be able to actually go after the younger generation in a way that, clearly is not actually happening right now. Like I've yet to see a traditional winery really tap into, 30 and under in a way that is in any way relevant whatsoever, versus all the aforementioned brands and that you said, as well as yours. So
100%. I am excited to see how it changes as a whole. I do feel like everyone is shook right now. Like, I don't know if you saw Chateau Saint Michel is not buying the quantity of grapes that they bought in the past. I think they are only taking 40 or 60% of what they bought in the past. Like, the wine industry is waking up, and I think a few years ago where they were, rolling their eyes at wine influencers and all the social content around it. Now they're realizing that it's a necessity, and they're running to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah. So, outside of those sort of key things when it comes to social activations, what are you most excited about, going into next year for Nomadica? Like, is there anything that if you had to pick three, I would say, or, what are you most excited about?
I'm the most excited about the launch of our boxed wine, which is happening in early October. And we're doing a small launch and expanding, and scaling up as it grows. I really see boxed as the future, and I'm very excited about it as an opportunity. We launched orange wine in July. We kind of reverse engineered our perfect orange wine. So my expertise is in Italian wine, which, that's kind of how skin contact wine reemerged in the market. Obviously, of course, it is a traditional style of winemaking that the Georgians have done for thousands of years, but was reintroduced in Friuli in northeastern Italy in the 70s. And so I sent our winemaker my favorite examples of Italian skin contact wines that I think hit all the benchmarks in terms of fruit, low tannin, high acid, approachability, so that if you're an orange wine lover, you'd love this. But if you're just having your first skin contact wine, it's not going to, blow your face off with a volatile acidity or anything. Okay. And so we settled on Paulo Bea Santa Chiara being like our wine, which I like. If you can find it, drink that right now. I'm jealous.
No, I literally,
I think I bought.
I have it pulled up on my browser here because I just got a case of it delivered yesterday. So, which I only because I only discovered it at Key Spaka. So.
We're just, we're like ships in the night here. I think that's a perfect wine in my book. And so I had sent that to our winemaker, Coriel Berry, who is so talented and really comes from the vineyard management side. So again, we love farming. And we made a skin contact Chardonnay, Albarino, Gruner Veltliner, certified organic fruit from Potter Valley and Mendocino. That is our California homage to Paulo Bea.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to try it then.
Yes. Multiple big buyers have said it is one of the best orange wines that they've ever had in bottle or can. Okay. Which is such a testament to me. And then I'm really excited about social. Like, I was so afraid to put my face on the internet, and our CMO has been mean to me about it. He's like, make a video. What's wrong with you? And then, every time I make a video, he's like, why are you doing this weird lip thing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? But we hired an incredible person to come on board, and she's, young, really excited, gets it, and has been working with me to make all of our content. And the response has been tremendous. And I'm just excited to make more of that. I want to be the Pied Piper for young people in wine on the internet. So expect to see a lot more.
That's an awesome way to put it. I'm going to have to tap into my younger generation roots and get back on TikTok then, so I can get some of these SOM tips.
Yeah, you need to be engaging with my content, Brandon. Come on.
I'm terrible. I can't stand Twitter or X. I haven't ever really gotten into TikTok. I'm like my mom. Like, I'll send Instagram reel memes to people, and that's about it. And that's my level of social engagement. But no, it is very important, and especially in categories like wine. I see it in other categories where maybe it's real estate or things like that, where those have just been inundated with all these quote unquote influencers. And it's like, what's real, what's not. There's a lot of crap. But within the wine space, that doesn't really feel like anybody is doing what you're doing. At least not at scale, or not definitely not on those types of platforms either. Maybe like YouTube per se, but much more formal and traditional, not like your short clips that are fun and catchy and, educational to a different type of audience.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when I'm asked about our moats and biggest pieces of defensibility, I'm number one. I don't think anybody else in my space can show up with the type of authenticity that we can.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start Nomadica to become a bajillionaire. I started it because I love wine and want to share my love of wine with people. And I think today's young consumer is incredibly savvy, brutally savvy. I think they can see through, greenwashing and all the lies and marketing tricks that a lot of businesses have historically used to get consumers. And so it's created the really great opportunity for us.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
what I've seen in other verticals is the brands that have the authenticity, but also have the founder who can be the face of it are more successful, especially when it comes to social. Like, customers don't shop from brands anymore. They really shop from people and the founders behind them, unless you're like, I don't know, Nike or something like that, but that's sort of a different case. All of the, startups on Shopify that I've seen become very successful, for the most part, are very founder led, where the founder's story is baked
100%.
into the product. The founder is on social. The founder is, sending out the SMS marketing message with like a selfie of them in the warehouse. Like, all of that breeds a connection that's more one-to-one. You even see it in like LinkedIn. If I post something, it could get great engagement. If Electric posts something or Drinks posts something, it gets like, 1/10 of the engagement, because people don't connect to the company or to the brand in the same way that they can connect to a person.
100%. I mean, I've been so amazed with what Jeremy Kim has done at Nectar Hard Seltzer. I am obsessed with that brand and obsessed with their entire team and how they just activate and bring like the digital to real life. He'll have people lined up at HEB in Texas to meet him and be in a video with him and grab some seltzers. And he shows up as his most authentic self on the internet, and it really resonates with people. It's just great to see.
Yeah. And the BS detector of consumers is like through the roof now. So you can't get away with, anything that's not genuine. And I think it's better for the long run. But I got a couple of fun questions for you before we wrap things up here. First being, what is your favorite wine memory?
Okay, so I think my favorite wine memory is, it's gonna sound like so annoying and sommelier, but I love Barolo. I guess if I'm, Italian wine expert, worked at Mozza, and the first time I had Conterno Monfortino, which is kind of thought of as the best Barolo ever on the planet. And it was 2002 vintage, which was a really difficult year in Barolo. A lot of producers did not make their single vineyard wines, and Conterno did it. I could wax poetic about my love of Conterno's Barolo forever, but we'll save that for another day. And I just remember I grew up in Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts, like very rural farmland. My family are all farmers, and agriculture has just been such a big thing in my life. And obviously the seasonality of Massachusetts, like fall is our season. If anyone's ever seen like Gilmore Girls, like that's the appeal of the show. It's like cozy fall time, the beautiful foliage, the brick-lined street. And my first time smelling Monfortino like brought me back to fall fields. Like people just like would build these huge piles of leaves and burn them, and it brought me back through like walking on an early morning, damp field. You can smell the burned leaves. You can smell the wet earth. There's like this crispness in the air. You know, apple trees are everywhere. And it felt like being home for a second. And I've lived in California for a decade plus. And I always was just amazed at how the sense of smell in a wine can take you back to a whole other spot. And it's always been amazing to me that, especially